Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Zoe and I make motherhood and lifestyle videos, and today's video is going to be all on co-sleeping. So I've named this video Co-Sleeping My Dirty Little Secret because I think this topic is very taboo. People don't really talk about it a lot, and most often gets embarrassed that they do it, or maybe they have done it at some point. But it's a very real topic. You know, lots of people are co-sleeping, and I think we just need to talk about it more. So today's video, I'm going to be sharing my experience with co-sleeping, how I got into it, and what we do for co-sleeping, how we make it work. And then I want to talk about some pros and cons with co-sleeping. So you might be watching this video today and you might not co-sleep at all, or maybe you're trying to decide whether that's the best step for you to take, your family to take. And so I just wanted to throw some of my own personal pros and cons in there, just from my experience, so that you can maybe feel a bit more informed when making your decision, or maybe you don't co-sleep but you just want to learn more about why people do it. And then I also want to talk about some myths when it comes to co-sleeping, some things that people think co-sleepers do but they don't. So enjoy this video, guys. So when Nate was born, we started off with a bassinet next to our bed. It was it's a co-sleeper bassinet, is what it's called, and it actually has a strap and it ties to the mattress so that there's no gaps, it can't move or anything. And basically the baby sleeps on their bassinet, on the mattress in the bassinet, and it feels like they're sort of on your mattress because they're right next to you, but they're in their own little safe sleep space. So it worked really well in the beginning when he was really tiny, and as first-time parents we were terrified of having him in our bed. And you know, coming from the hospital, all of the doctors and midwives continued to warn us about co-sleeping and the dangers of it and safety and whatnot. So we had it in our mind that we were definitely going to have him in the bassinet, but because I was breastfeeding and I also had a C-section, it was definitely really easy having him right there next to me, and I'm sure he felt probably really safe and happy because he could see that his mum was right next to him. So it worked really well. But then of course he outgrew it, like all babies do, which sucked because I really love this thing. And then we had to move him to his cot, and I didn't consider moving him to his own room at this point, just to the nursery that I had set up when I was pregnant and we haven't used yet for sleep. But I realized, you know, Nate at that point was still feeding I think 2 or 3 times a night, something like that. And you know, I could easily do it in bed, and then put him in the cot or whatever in the same room, or I could get up and have to sit up and feed him and stay awake and then put him down and then walk back to our room and try to fall asleep. And I realized that that probably wouldn't work for us, and I would get over that very fast. I love my sleep, and I probably would be tempted to do sleep training or like a night weaning sort of thing, which I didn't want to do, and I still don't want to do. My parenting method is very baby led, so I'm, you know, happy to, I guess, do what Nate, anything that he needs, I'll provide that until he has outgrown it. Yeah, so I didn't feel comfortable doing that, so we decided to move the cot to our room. And our setup is basically the cot is right next to our bed. We pushed it up in the corner and the bed is pushed up against the cot. And so Nate now, he goes to sleep before us, of course. Being a baby, he goes to bed around like 7:30, and so I put him in his cot, and then later on 9-10 o'clock I'll go to bed. And then when he first wakes up and stirs, now I will bring him into bed and feed, but instead of staying awake and then putting him back in there like I did when he was a newborn, because he's a fair bit bigger, he's 10 months old now, and those first 6 months are sort of those really important time for like safety for SIDS and whatnot. It's the highest time, highest chance of getting SIDS before 6 months. Yeah, I feel pretty comfortable falling asleep now with him, and that's often what happens because I'm just pretty out of it and I just fall asleep. And I think like the breastfeeding hormones as well make you feel really tired and drowsy, and yeah, So we often just fall back asleep. If I do happen to be awake, then I do pop him back in his cot. but I'm really not too concerned with that at all. And then throughout the night, he just stays in with us and he breastfeeds as much as he wants. I rarely wake up. And then in the early morning, I find he often stirs a fair bit more just because, you know, his hormones and whatnot would be telling his body to get ready to wake up. But having him right next to me, I find, is really great because he just drowses back off to sleep. So it's, yeah, fantastic. Anytime I have put him back in his bassinet or cot in the early morning, so after 4 a.m, and he stirs, after that, I find it's really hard to settle him again because he sort of wakes up a fair bit more. So that's what we do now, and it works really well. He does go in his cot for day naps, so we only co-sleep at night. He doesn't, I don't sleep next to him when he naps or anything. As for future plans for co-sleeping, I'm not really too sure. My initial goal was just 12 months because having your baby in the same room as you, so room sharing, is protective against SIDS for the first 12 months. And that's what's recommended by the World Health Organization, is to have your baby in your room with you because it promotes breastfeeding and it's also protective against SIDS. So that's my initial goal, but you know, that's only 2 months away, and I don't know how I feel about moving him to his own room at 12 months. You know, 1 year old is still so little, and there's obviously going to be a time where he's going to be grown up and will want to sleep by himself. So I'm really okay with the fact that he may be in our bed longer than 12 months, and he may be a toddler when that happens. But yeah, something for my husband and I to speak about, and I guess we'll see how we go. But at the moment, I'm pretty okay with him in our room for now. And really, I think also I'll sort of see how often he's breastfeeding overnight. At the moment, if he has a good night, it's usually 2 times that he needs to feed during the night. And yes, I know he's 10 months old and he doesn't physically need to have milk. I can definitely, you know, look at trying to night wean, give him more milk during the day instead of letting him space it out. But as I said, I'm very baby-led with my parenting methods, and I'm happy to do what he's doing naturally and not try to train anything out of him just yet. I mean, it's working for me anyway, and if it was a big issue, then I probably would. But at the moment, it's fine. I'm absolutely fine with that. So yeah, I guess we'll wait and see what happens. I've also heard that even though they physically don't need to feed overnight, their emotional need for like a milk feed and a cuddle is quite high, and that doesn't usually go away till between 12 and 18 months, but it depends on the individual child, so every baby is different. So knowing that as well, knowing that he emotionally will probably still need to have a milk feed to help settle him for sleep throughout the night, makes me also want to keep him in our room, because it's just gonna be easier to feed him overnight, honestly, in our room, instead of me having to get up and go to the nursery and feed him and then try to settle myself for sleep. I just feel that we will all get much better sleep. At the moment, I sleep 8+ hours a night. It's really great, and it's not, I'm often not disturbed. You know, even with Nate waking, because he's right next to me, I just get to him really quickly, so we both fall back asleep so easily. My husband is also absolutely fine with co-sleeping. He rarely wakes up. He's pretty good. So it's working really well for us at the moment. And now I'm going to share some of my pros and cons, but of course this is coming from my own experience. So I've spoken to a lot of parents since I've become a parent, and of course everyone is different. Everyone parents different, everyone has different babies, and you know, some people find co-sleeping really easy and others it just disturbs them and, you know, their partner, their whole family way too much, and everyone's better if they're all in their own room. But you know, we're all different. So my pro might be a con for you and my con might be a pro for you. So just, yeah, know that this is my personal list of pros and cons. Okay, pro for co-sleeping is that it promotes breastfeeding. So that's something that I definitely want to continue before my child definitely hits 1, but possibly also longer than that, maybe up until he's 2. Another pro is that it helps the child to breathe actually in a really, well, they actually copy your breathing. So that's why it protects against SIDS. That's another reason why, because they actually get into a really good breathing tune, and they sort of follow what you do. Their heart rate is also actually, it copies you as well, which is really cool. And their temperature is often like really good because they're in the same room as you, and I guess maybe you can manage their you know, the temperature in the room a bit more if they're right next to you and you sort of know what it feels like to be in that room as well. Another pro is that everyone gets more sleep. That's what I personally think, but I know some people, they wake way too easily and they can't sleep next to a baby. But I personally think that I get so much more sleep when I just embrace co-sleeping and I just let myself fall back asleep whilst I feed him, instead of trying to force myself to stay awake and put him back in his cot. Again, I guess it's just easy. I just find it really easy. And I guess another pro is that it's also meeting the child's emotional needs at the time. So instead of, you know, putting them in their own room and I guess forcing them to do that if your child wants to be in your room. Because I know some babies are fine in their own room and they actually sleep better and they don't wake up as much. But my baby, he's very clingy, especially overnight, and he does get upset sometimes when I do try to put him back in his cot, or if he's, yeah, away from us. So there's my pros. Cons, so I guess, even though I do get really great sleep now, I do get woken up, and that doesn't always feel good. I do get to fall asleep pretty easy, but I guess that's probably a con, and for some people it would be harder to fall asleep depending on how you are as a person and how much that disturbs you. So I guess it can disrupt your sleep compared to if you put your baby in their own room and then maybe sleep train them so that they don't need to wake up throughout the night. And then another con is obviously safety. So that's often a big thing that people talk about when they talk about co-sleeping, is the safety of it. And I will link below that it's called the Safe Sleep 7. It's something that I recommend that you read if you're going to co-sleep or if you are already co-sleeping. So it just goes through like 7 tips or 7 things that you should be doing if you're co-sleeping. So things like, you know, you shouldn't be on any medicines or drugs, no alcohol, breastfeeding. I don't know if you bottle feed or formula feed, like what the rules are around that. I haven't looked into that, so something to look into if you do bottle feed. And then there's, you know, no, baby shouldn't overheat. They should be on their backs. No, like pillows and like big fluffy blankets and things that they can like suffocate on. So just a few things like that. And I think that's really my only cons. I don't really have a lot of cons. So there's your pros and cons list. Hopefully that helps you decide. And I also really wanted to talk about safety with co-sleeping. So as I said, I did mention the link below for the Safe Sleep 7 for co-sleeping. So what we personally do for safety reasons, this is something I definitely looked into when, you know, I was bringing Nate into bed to feed, and I realized sometimes I was falling asleep. So as I said, I pushed the cot against the wall and then the bed's pushed up against that. So there's no gaps. So that's a really big one. And that's often, like when you hear a baby has passed away from co-sleeping, it's often because they have fallen into like some sort of gap or crevice surrounding the bed, and they like were stuck and they couldn't breathe, which is terrible. So you want to make sure there's absolutely no gaps, no way that the baby can fall into anything. And yeah, how we've set it up, he cannot. And then for blankets, what we do is Nate does go in a sleep sack because he does sleep at the start of the night by himself. So he goes into a sleep sack, and then when he does wake up, I bring him into bed and I tuck the blanket around me. So he's in his sleep sack, I'm in my blanket, and we're separate in that way. I believe that babies can't have blankets till after 12 months. So I think I'll continue using sleep sacks because they work really well for us. And Nate is pretty active when he's in his cot by himself. He rolls all over the place. So yeah, I make sure I don't let him overheat so that he's comfortable in whatever pajamas he's wearing. And I breastfeed, of course, overnight. So often when I do fall asleep, it's because I'm feeding. And that's actually the safest position to fall asleep in with a baby. Your arm is usually like over their head and it's between the pillow in their head, so they can't physically get into the pillow. Your knees are tucked up underneath their body, so that stops them from rolling away or from someone rolling onto them. Yeah, it's just a really great position for co-sleeping. I also don't let him sleep in between my husband and I. I just put him on my right side, the side that the cot is on, and then my husband's on my left. That way Nate can't physically fall out of bed anyway. He can't roll off, and there's no gaps or anything because when he rolls, he'll just hit the cot. And my husband can't roll onto him at all, and he also can't get stuck in between our blankets. So just a few reasons, that's what we do. But of course, everyone's different. Some people use those guardrail things on the side of their bed so the baby can't roll off onto the floor. Some people do like a floor mattress and you don't even have, you know, a bed frame or anything. You just literally have a mattress on the floor. That way if the baby rolls, they just roll onto the floor. So yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can co-sleep and make it work, but you just need to decide that. I guess it's a family. Okay, now let's bust some myths with co-sleeping. So this is probably my favorite part of this video because I feel like there are a lot of myths when it comes to co-sleeping and I'm really excited to bust some. So myth number one, if you're co-sleeping, you need to go to sleep when the baby sleeps. Absolutely false. As I said, I put Nate to bed at around like 7:30, and then I come to bed a couple hours later, normal adult time. This works because we do have the cot in our room and I put him in that so he's safe in there before I come to bed. Yeah, everyone's different though. I've heard of some people just putting the baby in the cot in the nursery and then when they wake up they then go into the parents' bed. So yeah, you can just do what you want there. I'm sure maybe some do have their child staying up with them until they go to bed maybe, but there's definitely ways around it that your baby can go to sleep before you. So myth number two, if you co-sleep, you must not be on any sort of schedule at all. False. I personally love schedules and Nate is on a sleep schedule every day for his naps and nighttime sleep. I follow his awake times and his sleepy cues and all that sort of stuff. And he has 2 naps a day. It's very routine, like each day. It doesn't really change now that he's on 2 naps. He's going really well with that actually. Yeah, I think people think that if you're co-sleeping, you just do everything differently and weird. That's not the case at all. I keep Nate on a very strict schedule. Myth number 3, if you co-sleep, you must be exhausted or your husband must be exhausted or partner. False. If I was exhausted, I would not co-sleep. I would probably move him to a different room or try something different until it worked. I get great sleep. As I said, usually get 8+ hours. I'm someone who needs their sleep. Like I do not function at all if I get less than 8 hours. Like if I get 7.5 hours, which is still like a good amount of sleep for an adult, I just feel awful all day. I feel so exhausted. My husband can definitely cope on 6 or 7 hours of sleep each day and he's fine, but I cannot. But we both, with co-sleeping, we both sleep really well, even if we do slightly wake up throughout the night, which all adults do anyway. We fall straight back asleep, so it works really well for us. So myth number 4, if you're co-sleeping, then you obviously cannot be intimate at all with your partner. False. So if you think that, then I think you need to be a bit more creative when it comes to intimacy. There are other rooms, I guess, in the house, and There are other times of the day than just before sleep in your bedroom. So, you know, be a bit creative with that. And, you know, I think as parents, we learn to adapt with everything with our children, and we have to because we don't have any other choice. It's the same with co-sleeping. So if you're worried that, you know, intimacy is going to be thrown out the window because your baby's in your bed, do know that, you know, babies often go to bed hours before the adults. So you usually have a couple of hours in the evening time after work to spend with your partner, loved one. So be creative, think outside the box. Okay, those are all my myths. Hopefully I've busted them all. I know not everyone will be doing those things, but that's from my personal experience. I really hope you like this video, and I hope you learned a thing or two about co-sleeping, whether you co-sleep or not. And please make sure you write in the comments below what your experience is with sleep and your children, whether you do co-sleep or not. I love to read about it and read what other people do. And if you do, please make sure you write like the ages of your children, and if you co-sleep, how long you co-slept for, what your setup was, all that sort of stuff. And if you have any co-sleeping tips for me, please make sure you write them in the comments below, because I always want to know more about that sort of stuff. And if you liked this video, please make sure you hit subscribe to my channel, and you can watch more videos similar to this one. Thanks, guys.